Inside Folsom Prison, Rules of the Yard. For over a century, Folsom State Prison has stood as one of the most iconic correctional facilities in the United States. Built in 1880, it is the second oldest prison in California still in operation. But what happens inside these walls, especially on the yard, is governed by a system far more complex than official prison rules. Because inside Folsom, there are two sets of laws. The ones written by the state, and the ones enforced by the inmates. Before we go deeper inside, take a moment to support the channel. Like the video, subscribe to the Inmate Diaries, and help us continue bringing you real, documented stories from inside the world's most notorious prisons. The legacy of Folsom. Folsom State Prison is not just another correctional facility. It is a place shaped by over a century of violence, reform, and survival. Located in Northern California, the prison was originally designed to house some of the state's most dangerous offenders. Over time, it became known for strict discipline, hard labor, and a reputation that extended far beyond its walls. In 1970, the prison gained international attention when Johnny Cash performed a live concert inside its walls, an event that highlighted both the harsh conditions and the humanity of those incarcerated. But behind that cultural moment, the daily reality remained unchanged. Folsom was, and still is, a maximum security prison. And within its yards, inmates operate under a structured social system that has evolved over decades. A system not written in any official handbook. A system enforced by consequences that are often immediate and severe. Entering the yard. Every movement inside Folsom is controlled. Doors open and close on schedule. Inmates walk in lines. Commands are followed without hesitation. But when the yard opens, something changes. The prison yard is one of the few places where inmates interact freely, under supervision, but with enough space to operate within their own social structures. To an outsider, it may look like a standard open space. Weights. Basketball courts. Benches. Small groups talking. But to those inside, every step matters. Where you sit. Who you talk to. Where you stand. Even where you look. Because the yard is not random. It is organized, divided, and understood by everyone who survives there. The unwritten rules. There is no official document that explains the rules of the yard. But every inmate learns them quickly. Or they face consequences. One of the most widely documented aspects of California prison culture is racial segregation. In many facilities, including Folsom, inmates tend to group themselves along racial or geographic lines. This is not an official policy. In fact, courts have ruled against enforced segregation in prisons, including a major 2005 U.S. Supreme Court case involving California's prison system. However, despite legal rulings, informal segregation has continued to exist in various forms. Experts and former inmates have described this as a survival-based system. Each group controls specific areas. Each group has internal leadership. And each group enforces its own expectations. Crossing those invisible boundaries, without understanding the consequences, can lead to conflict. Sometimes immediately. Respect is survival. Inside Folsom, respect is not a social courtesy. It is a form of currency. A system of order. A method of survival. Disrespect, whether intentional or accidental, can escalate quickly. Looking at someone the wrong way. Sitting in the wrong place. Interrupting a conversation. Failing to follow expected conduct within a group. These actions may seem minor from the outside. But inside the yard, they can carry serious consequences. Correctional experts and documented inmate testimonies consistently describe a culture where individuals must remain aware of their surroundings at all times. Because mistakes are rarely overlooked. And in many cases, they are corrected by other inmates, not staff. Staff versus inmate control. From above. Correctional officers monitor everything. Armed towers. Perimeter patrols. Surveillance systems. On paper, the prison is fully controlled by the state. But multiple studies and official reports have acknowledged a more complex reality. While staff maintain overall security, much of the day-to-day order within inmate populations is influenced by internal hierarchies. This does not mean staff are absent. But it does mean that many conflicts, alliances, and social rules are managed within the inmate population itself. In some cases, this internal structure can reduce random violence. In others, it can reinforce divisions and organized group behavior. The balance between official authority and inmate influence remains one of the most studied aspects of maximum security prisons like Folsom. And it is a balance that is constantly shifting. The politics of the yard. Inside Folsom's yard, social structure is not random. It is organized through a system often described by researchers and former inmates as prison politics. These are not politics in the traditional sense. There are no ballots. No campaigns. But there is structure. Hierarchy. And enforcement. Different inmate groups, often formed along racial, regional, or affiliation lines, operate with internal leadership. These leaders are sometimes referred to in documentation and testimonies as shot callers, though specific roles and titles can vary and are not always publicly documented. Their role, as described in multiple academic and correctional sources, is to maintain order within their group. This can include resolving disputes, enforcing behavioral expectations, communicating with other groups. In some cases, these internal systems can prevent chaos. In others, they can escalate tensions quickly, especially when conflicts arise between groups. Importantly, much of this structure exists outside official prison policy. And because of that, it remains difficult to fully document. Some aspects are well studied. Others remain unclear, or based on consistent but unverified accounts. Daily routine on the yard. Despite its reputation, much of the yard operates on routine. Inmates exercise. Walk laps. Talk in small groups. Some read. Others simply observe. But even routine is structured. Weight piles, for example, are often associated with specific groups. Access and use may follow informal understandings that are widely recognized among inmates. The same applies to seating areas, walking paths, and gathering spots. There is no official map. But there is an understood order. Correctional officers remain present, monitoring behavior and ensuring that activity stays within institutional rules. However, they do not dictate where individuals stand or who they associate with, unless a clear security risk emerges. This creates a layered environment. Official rules, enforced by staff. And informal rules, enforced by inmates. Together, they shape the daily rhythm of the yard. Conflict and consequences. Conflict inside Folsom does happen. But it rarely comes without warning. In many documented cases, tension builds over time. Through disputes, misunderstandings, or violations of expected conduct. When conflict reaches a breaking point, it can escalate quickly. Correctional officers are trained to respond immediately. This can include yard lockdowns, deployment of response teams, temporary suspension of movement. According to official reports, incidents are handled using established protocols designed to restore control and prevent further escalation. However, not all conflicts are visible. Some are resolved internally between inmate groups. Others remain undocumented. And in many cases, the full context behind an incident is not made public. What is clear, based on available data, is that maintaining order in a maximum security yard requires constant monitoring and rapid response when situations change. The role of reputation. Inside the yard, reputation matters. It is built over time. Through behavior. Through consistency. Through adherence to the expectations of one's group. Correctional research and inmate accounts both indicate that individuals who fail to meet those expectations may face consequences, ranging from social isolation to more serious outcomes. At the same time, reputation can also provide a form of protection. Those who are seen as reliable, disciplined, or aligned with group standards, may experience fewer conflicts. But reputation is not static. It can change quickly. And once it does, rebuilding it can be difficult. This dynamic creates an environment where every action carries weight. And every decision can have long-term consequences. New inmates and adaptation. For new arrivals, the yard presents an immediate challenge. Understanding the rules is not optional. It is necessary. Orientation processes in California prisons include official briefings, covering institutional rules, safety procedures, and expectations. But these briefings do not explain the informal systems of the yard. New inmates must learn those through observation, or through interaction with others. Some may receive guidance from individuals within their assigned housing units. Others may rely on prior knowledge, especially if they have experience in the prison system. But for those unfamiliar with the environment, the adjustment period can be critical. Mistakes are more likely during this phase. And as documented in multiple studies, early missteps can lead to long-term consequences within the prison social structure. Because in a place like Folsom, understanding the rules is not just about fitting in. It is about staying safe. The role of gang affiliations. Within Folsom State Prison, group affiliations can play a significant role in how the yard operates. Some of these affiliations are formally recognized by correctional authorities as security threat groups, also known as STGs. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, STGs are defined as groups whose members engage in activities that threaten the safety of institutions, staff, or inmates. These groups may include prison gangs, street gangs, or other organized associations. It is important to note that not every inmate is affiliated with a gang. However, documented research indicates that gang presence has historically influenced social structure within many California prisons, including Folsom. Affiliation, whether confirmed, suspected, or assumed, can affect where an inmate stands on the yard, who they interact with, and how they are perceived by others. At the same time, official policy prohibits gang activity, and correctional staff actively monitor, investigate, and attempt to disrupt organized group behavior. Despite these efforts, the influence of such affiliations has not been fully eliminated. Some aspects are well documented. Others remain difficult to verify due to the closed nature of prison environments. Communication without words. On the yard, communication is not always verbal. In fact, some of the most important messages are delivered without words. Correctional experts and documented inmate accounts describe a system where gestures, positioning, and timing can all carry meaning. A nod. A glance. Where someone chooses to sit. How close they stand to another group. These signals can indicate respect, alignment, or warning. Because conversations, especially sensitive ones, are often monitored, nonverbal communication becomes a practical alternative. However, much of this system is not formally documented. Its interpretation can vary depending on context, group dynamics, and individual experience. What is consistent is that understanding these signals is part of adapting to the yard. And misunderstanding them can lead to unintended consequences. Lockdowns and control. When order breaks down, or is at risk of breaking down, Folsom can enter lockdown. A lockdown is an emergency measure used to restore control. Movement stops. Inmates are directed to secure positions. Searches may be conducted. And access to the yard is suspended. Lockdowns can be triggered by various factors, including fights or group disturbances, Discovery of contraband. Intelligence indicating potential conflict. According to official CDCR procedures, these measures are designed to prevent escalation and ensure safety. The duration of a lockdown can vary. Some last hours. Others extend for days or longer, depending on the situation. During this time, daily routines are disrupted. Meals are modified. Programs are paused. And the yard, normally a space of controlled interaction, becomes completely still. The mental pressure of the yard. Beyond the visible structure of the yard, there is a psychological dimension. One that is less documented, but widely acknowledged. Living in an environment where constant awareness is necessary can create ongoing mental strain. Inmates must remain alert. Aware of surroundings. Aware of group dynamics. Aware of potential risks. Academic studies on incarceration have consistently highlighted the effects of hypervigilance in prison settings. This includes increased stress levels, difficulty relaxing, and long-term psychological impact. However, individual experiences vary. Some adapt over time. Others struggle. And because much of this experience is internal, it is not always visible to staff or documented in official reports. What is clear is that survival on the yard is not only physical. It is mental. Change over time. Folsom State Prison has changed over the decades. Policies have evolved. Oversight has increased. Court rulings, such as those addressing racial segregation, have influenced how institutions operate. Correctional strategies now place greater emphasis on safety, accountability, and rehabilitation. But change inside long-standing institutions is often gradual. Some practices disappear. Others adapt. And some continue in ways that are not always visible to the public. Researchers note that while official policies can shift quickly, informal systems may take much longer to change. Because they are built over time. Maintained through shared understanding. And reinforced by experience. At Folsom, the yard remains a place where past and present intersect. Where official rules meet lived reality. And where the balance between control and adaptation continues to evolve. The reality of the yard. At the end of the day, the yard at Folsom is not defined by a single narrative. It is not just violence. And it is not just routine. It is a controlled environment shaped by two systems operating at the same time. Official rules, enforced by the state. And informal structures, maintained within the inmate population. Both influence how the yard functions. Both affect how individuals move, interact, and survive. Much of what happens inside is documented through reports, research, and oversight. But not everything is visible. Not everything is recorded. And not everything is fully understood from the outside. What remains clear is this. Folsom's yard is a place where awareness matters. Where structure exists beyond policy. And where every day is shaped by rules. Both written and unwritten. If you found this story insightful, support the Inmate Diaries by liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. Your support helps us continue sharing real, factual stories from inside the world's most complex prison systems. Until next time, stay informed.